NRL boss David Gallop handed the Melbourne Storm.
Canterbury, a club in crisis.
D-Day for Todd.
Sonny Bill
Club has cheated the salary cap.
Something of this magnitude has been devastating.
You specialised in all the big stuff: sex, drugs, salary cap.
We were sort of charged with the task of regenerating the game. It had been through a lot of upheaval.
It's all about lining people's pockets with money.
Was Super League a good idea just ahead of its time?
It damaged relations as well. It took a while to bring it all back together.
The club has cheated the salary cap.
Sitting in my office with just Steve Folkes, he and I both sort of had a tear.
The biggest name at the time, Sonny Bill Williams, just walk out.
The unexpected comes along quite often.
The stripping of 2 premierships.
We are not going anywhere.
One of the biggest scandals in rugby league in 100 years.
The elaborate lengths to hide the payments was quite extraordinary.
You must have been the most hated man in Melbourne. Still to this day, some players say that it was really unfair.
I didn't hide your contract at the CEO's house.
Well, David Gallop, a fair-minded, brilliant lawyer who finally made rugby league play by the rules. Is that how you look back on your time?
I certainly had a great time in rugby league. I worked in the game for 17 years, 10 years as the CEO, and it was a great privilege. I loved the game then, and I love it now.
Looking back on your career, and especially the 10-year tender as CEO, you specialised in all the big stuff: sex, drugs, salary cap. Quite a legacy that you had to navigate.
We were sort of charged with the task of regenerating the game. It had been through a lot of upheaval. And I was a bit of a student of the NFL, so, you know, there were a couple of things that I took away from how they were running their sport. One was that on any Sunday concept. You know, we wanted to regenerate the game by getting people to fall back in love with their club. And the way to do that was for them to have a real belief that their team could win on any weekend. I think the other sort of adage was, if you get the team into the community gets into the team. People started to buy jerseys and come to games in jerseys, and that tribalism is alive and well.
You were in charge during some of the most damaging headlines and some of the biggest stories and shocking stories that we saw in the game. How does that work when a big story is about to break and you're at home? Do you get a phone call from Buzz Rothfield, or is it your team that kind of call you in the middle of the night and say, hey, listen, we've got something that's on the boil here?
You know, one I can always remember, which turned out to be not as serious as we first thought it was I remember landing into Singapore after an international meeting, and there was messages about players being shot at. John Brady was the media guy, said to me, don't answer the phone until you've spoken to me. Turned out that there were some shots fired, not actually at the players, but, you know, as an example of you've got to be careful to check what's actually happened. How
well did you like to be briefed?
Of course, you know, you want time to prepare. Sometimes you don't have it. One of the first things I dealt with was the Bulldogs salary cap issue, and that was a dump of information to the Herald. It was going to be the front page on the Saturday morning. I went to the Friday night game. Parramatta played the Bulldogs. The Bulldogs beat Parramatta. Brian Smith was in the change room upset with the refereeing, etc. And I remember saying to him, you know, you're going to wake up tomorrow morning and you're going to be happy that you're at Parramatta, not Canterbury. And of course, it was the front page story the next morning.
In your 10 years in charge, did you become an expert in crisis management?
The unexpected comes along quite often, and it's really important that you deal with those issues appropriately, because that's what keeps fans' faith in the game. So I think the so-called crises are important moments in the games and the business of the game.
What do you think your touchstone to rugby league is, where you thought, oh, gosh, this really is the greatest game of all?
You know, a moment that stands out for me, and we talked about this quite recently at the Clovelly Hotel, Joey and I, that 1997 grand final that the ARL had. I was in the Super League camp, but then you're sitting there and you see Joey turn the ball inside to Darren Albert, and you just go, wow, the game's done it again.
Down the block, Andrew John, inside for Albert. Albert will score! Albert will score! Newcastle have won the grand final!
And I think it was the start of the peace process, really. Joey's pass led to people thinking we need him playing against Alf and Ricky, and we can't have two competitions any longer. We've got to bring it all together. And that started months of talks about how that would happen. That's a moment when I think I could say it is the greatest game of all.
Gifted sporting, but academic was obviously a priority for you, so university seemed like the right step. You sort of bounced around a couple of courses until you eventually followed in your father's footsteps into law. Yeah,
ironically, the first thing I did after school was a course called Sports Administration in Canberra. I think I lasted a week, and I thought, oh, who'd want to be a sports administrator?
You didn't like it?
So I got out of that, and I sort of ended up full circle 15 years later, I guess.
By the mid-90s, you're living in Sydney, you're a young lawyer and you're specialising in commercial and corporate litigation. By then, the game is on the brink of this transformation.
Sneaking up on the establishment like a stealth bomber, the Rupert Murdoch-backed Super League organisation made its initial raid on the Australian Rugby League's playing ranks while the 1994 Kangaroo Tour of Britain was in full swing.
So when did you first hear about the whisperings of a Super League and what that might look like?
I came into Super League, it had sort of already started, the signing of players, and I'd met John Rebo and, you know, said to him, you don't need a lawyer, do you? And he said, oh, okay, yeah, we might need one. And so I remember the first day in the office, there were 2 floors to the Super League. One of them was completely empty except for Graham Annesley and me. And we had this whole floor to ourselves.
What did John Rebo say to you in those early conversations? What did he say, I need this from you, David?
Yeah, I think there was big litigation on, there was big commercial contracts and player contracts, and so it sort of made sense to have an in-house lawyer.
Earlier this morning, News Limited trumpeted a galaxy of signings, players and coaches all stitched up, but when confronted...
Well, as I said, I haven't been approached, so, but I'd love to be if anything does happen down the line.
The rumours of the money, of whether they were true at the time, but they've become bigger than Ben-Hur over the course of history, but really was just such a groundbreaking time for the game. Did it feel like you were on the right side of history?
Yeah, there was a lot of emotion around, you know, the pretty aggressive way that it was all pulled together.
The fact is that I'm a little bit concerned, and I think most people are, that I'm not sure whether 2 competitions will work.
We did an interview with John Rebo and we found that clip from the footy show where he walks in. It's basically an ambush.
The vision is about taking the game to the rest of the world. It's about giving the patrons and the fans a better deal than what they've had in the past.
What a load of crap. It's all about paid television, John. It's all about lining people's pockets with money. And for you to sit here and say anything different is just an absolute fuck.
That really peels back how raw and emotional all of the conversations were at the time. What was it like to be in the rooms when all of that was going down?
There was a lot of emotion, and you know, I think Reeves copped a fair bit of flack for it, but he loved the game and he was ambitious for the game.
From a legal perspective, was Super League a good idea just ahead of its time?
Ever since, broadcast rights have continued to be such a critical part of the business of the game. So, you know, in that sense, just like World Series cricket, it revolutionised the game. It made the players remunerated at a level they never had been, but you know, it damaged some relations as well. So it took a while to bring it all back together.
By 2002, the NRL's looking for a new CEO. You initially withdrew your application, but then changed your mind 24 hours later. What happened?
I think when the 2 groups came together, ARL and Super League, we came together well, and there was a love of the game, and inside the building, things were in good shape. But I knew it would be hard. I knew there was still bitterness, particularly outside the building, and I just knew it would be a hard job. But
because you're the Super League guy.
Yeah, but just I think the game, you know, there's a lot of scrutiny around that job. But I took the job, and I remember a few days later I went to a trial game at the old Cessnock ground. The Knights played the Panthers, and I was standing near Gary and Gail Johns, and Joey came down the race and he winked at me and he said, "God's country, Dave." And I remember thinking, you know, I'll be okay at this. I'll work it out.
This young lawyer who really wants the best for the game. You're only, 6 months into your tenure. and you've got to put a red line through the Canterbury-Bankstown Bulldogs.
Canterbury, a club in crisis. Emergency meetings involving members of the league's club and football club started shortly after daybreak and continued for the majority of the day. It is alleged that the club has cheated the salary cap by almost $1.5 million over a 2-year period by using a secret third party to complement inflated player payments outside of the annual $3.25 million cap.
You described the salary cap violation as exceptional in both its size and its deliberate and ongoing nature. That sentence is quite a statement about the way that they were handling their business and their books. How brazen was it at the Bulldogs?
Yeah, it was brazen, but to their credit, once we got the information and some of it got dropped to the media by a whistleblower, to their credit, they came in and they said, yep, we did it, and the size of it just meant we couldn't have them winning the competition.
The National Rugby League has resolved to issue the Bulldogs with a breach notice, withdrawing 37 NRL competition points from its 2002 season tally and fining the club $500,000.
It was a hefty punishment for a substantial crime, the NRL effectively ending the Bulldogs' premiership hopes for 2002.
I remember sitting in my office with just Steve Folkes, the coach, and I think he and I both sort of had a tear at what was about to unfold. They were about to be put from the top of the comp to the bottom.
This is a terrific group of young men that we have here. They're very talented footballers, they're dedicated, they're professional, and the way they've handled the drama this week has been, exemplary.
It was sort of heartbreaking, but it had to be done. There wasn't really any alternative.
That's tough because then it's the players and it's Steve Folkes, but you are still in charge of not only destroying that season, but it's the damage that stays with the club afterwards.
Yeah, incredibly hard for fans to work out.
Well, I was speaking to somebody earlier and I've got arthritis in my hips, but I can't feel the pain of them as much as I do the pain in my heart. It just feels like somebody's ripped it out, taken something that I've cherished for at least 40 years and just destroyed it.
And incredibly hard for the playing group who thought they were about to play in September for the premierships. Probably wasn't quite what I expected 6 months into the job, but I knew what we had to do and I knew the penalty was right.
We have 5 days to serve this breach, and we'll be certainly putting together our game plan, and I still do believe whatever remote light there is some at the end of the tunnel.
So it's already a flashpoint in your career as CEO, and quite a serious one. And for you, you've had a young family, you've got death threats, and you've got security guards outside the house.
Yeah, I mean, it was funny. My wife was taking meals out to the security guard, and one of my kids was probably, 5 or 6 years old, said, "Why are we feeding the homeless guy out the front?" He's like, "No, he's not a homeless guy, he's actually security."
He's keeping us safe.
Yeah.
Wow. Was that the bottom line? You didn't want to ruin the integrity of the premiership?
Yeah. That evenness of the competition was the absolute pillar of what we were trying to do, and enforcing the salary cap hard was very important to that.
For something of this magnitude to come along has been devastating.
By 2004, Canterbury-Bankstown again were in the headlines, accused of sexual assault on a woman at a pre-season camp in Coffs Harbour.
The weather accurately reflected the mood. It was miserable at Belmore as the rugby league microscope focused once again on the Bulldogs. Allegations of a sexual assault, an incident involving several players, have rocked the club that refuses to elaborate on particulars.
I wish to make absolutely clear that the Bulldogs are fully cooperating with the police. I also make this appeal to the public to keep an open mind on this matter and ask them not to prejudge the outcome of the police investigation.
When did you first hear about the allegations?
Not exactly, in those days, which were incredibly traumatic days, for the club, for the woman, for the players. And it became a bit of a lightning rod for the game because Very quickly there became this kind of widespread suggestion there was no respect for women in the game, and I look back on that as a very traumatic moment for everybody involved, but also one which hopefully has led to programs that have educated young guys and improved, perhaps in areas where attitudes weren't right.
The $1 Million program will see players undergo courses aimed at creating an environment that discourages negative attitudes towards women.
We're going to have courses in place that address this both on a short-term basis and also a longer term with an extensive research project.
That story has still stayed with the Bulldogs. Some people still bring it up.
It quickly had a ripple effect across the whole game, which was hard to manage.
And not to pick on the Bulldogs, but again, they were the problem child. You had one of the biggest names, if not the biggest name at the time, Sonny Bill Williams, just walk out and go and play rugby in France.
There is breaking news that Sonny Bill Williams, no less, has walked out on the Bulldogs and, in fact, at the moment is out of the country or flying out of the country to take up a career playing French rugby.
That one was a Saturday, and I remember Ray Hadley rang me and he was on air at the time. It was sort of 12:10 on a Saturday, and he said, he's at the airport. And I couldn't believe it. I said, no, he couldn't be. But he was, and he went.
We are back in court today, and David Gallop has indicated that we'll follow the legal process to try and ensure that Sonny Bill's prevented from playing and is forced to come back and honour his contract with the Bulldogs, or at least come back and enter into discussions.
The Bulldogs got compensation, but the whole thing was, it was a bit of a shock. It wasn't one I was expecting. Maybe looks back now, hopefully, and realises walking out mid-contract wasn't the greatest move, but it was certainly one where I thought it was a G-up when someone told me.
It seems so out of the realms of possibility that someone would just get on a plane and leave. Did you think about a lifetime ban? Just as a bit of a marker?
Yeah, I think I can't exactly remember, but I think we said he couldn't come back straight away, but eventually did, and, what an unbelievably good player he turned out to be.
Did you ever talk to him one-on-one?
I've seen him since. We haven't really talked about the episode.
You've had some troublemakers, some high-profile ones. Todd Carney, now this is before the bubbler.
It was D-Day for Todd Carney, and the Raiders board decided the battle was over. The star halfback was provided with a 5-point disciplinary plan last week, including a suspension for the rest of 2008.
How did you decide to deal with Todd?
We told him that he had to sit out for a year, that Raiders had sacked him, and I couldn't see him turn up in another club. So I met him in a cafe, and just the two of us. And I said to him, you're going to have to sit out for a year, and he ultimately made a decision to go up to North Queensland. But I remember thinking he was just a nice kid. I remember saying to him at the end, how about no more tattoos? And he said to me, I've just got a couple more to get coloured in. And he was just a likeable kid.
He's such a great guy.
Made some mistakes.
Yeah.
What a great player too. So a bit of a shame. Didn't get to sort of fulfil absolutely everything he could have done in the game.
Brett Stewart was another one. Accused of sexual assault on his way home from a Manly function. I think it was a season launch, and he was the face of the game.
Just a week out from the league season kick-off, it's news David Gallop didn't need to hear.
Certainly a very serious matter, one that's distressing to everyone in the game.
Stewart has vehemently denied the allegations, but Gallop has confirmed the Seagulls are considering standing the star down while the investigation continues.
How did you see the NRL's responsibility towards Brett and how that was handled?
If you think about what would happen now if Brett was charged with those sort of offences, he probably would have spent 18 months to 2 years out of the game. Being a lawyer, I was very conscious that there was a criminal charge and we shouldn't go trying to prejudge that. There was some other behaviour on the night that we felt warranted a few weeks suspension, but I think maybe Brett looks back on it now, he'd realise that we didn't put him out for the whole period while he waited awaited criminal charges.
There's a lot of people coming out now at the moment and saying, it's quite easy for people to sit back and say Brett should, forget about the last couple of years. But unless you've actually been through, what he's been through in my family and that, I find it pretty hard to cop how people should just be telling him to get over it, So I think a few people should sort of pull their heads in a little bit.
The Stewart brothers held on to the resentment and the hurt that they had experienced at the time, and the 2011 grand final, you're there on stage and it became a bit of a scene and people were watching your interaction. How did you feel standing there on stage?
I mean, they won the comp and congratulations to that. It wasn't the place to go debating what had happened. As I say, when I look back and I see what the rules are now, I think maybe, Brett should understand that I tried to be as fair as we could be, given the other things that had happened that night, the face of the game stuff. He got a few weeks, but he certainly didn't get 2 years out of the game.
You were at the forefront of one of the biggest scandals in rugby league in 100 years of the game, and that was the Melbourne Storm.
NRL boss David Gallop handed the Melbourne Storm the biggest sledgehammer in rugby league history.
The penalty will be the stripping of 3 minor premierships and 2 premierships.
How big was it, and what was the first thing that you thought you had to do?
It was big. Ian Schubert had been looking at some anomalies for a few months, really. Then there was a whistleblower. So we had a lot of information. We decided to call the club up to Sydney, and they came the next day. I remember the CEO, the chairman came, and they famously had the red manila folder that the CEO had been told to keep at his house, had the contracts of some of the biggest names in the game.
The elaborate lengths that they went to hide the payments was quite extraordinary. The breakthrough in the investigation was the discovery by the salary cap auditor and his team of a file in a separate room at the Storm to the room that contained the file with the players' contracts.
They fully confessed on the day.
I'd like to apologise to the Australian people, to rugby league followers and to Melbourne Storm fans.
They then started to backflip on some of it later, but on the actual day, to their credit, they gave us everything that we needed and we had them cold. Hundreds of thousands over a number of years. The decision was then, well, we can't have them keep the premierships.
To simply ask them to take pay cuts to get below the salary cap would not dismantle the playing roster that's been put together at the Melbourne Storm.
So, we put in place the steps to do that, and then, of course, the season was underway, so we couldn't move players around. We didn't want to stop players playing, so we decided that they couldn't play for points in that season, and that was pretty traumatic.
But it didn't end there. The Storm left with nothing to play for this season.
In the 2010 season, all competition points earned thus far will be taken away, and the team shall not accrue any further points in the 2010 season.
I don't think we had any alternative as to what we did.
How large was your investigation? What did the auditor find that raised the red flag in the first place?
He found false invoicing and some stuff that set his alarm bells off. Then, as I say, he got some more information from an ex-employee. And then, really, they gave us, when they came to my office, they gave us really what stitched the whole thing up.
What did you think when you opened up that folder?
I thought it was pretty bizarre that it was in a red manila folder.
How underwhelming.
But, yeah, I think upset for the game, upset for them.
Because we hear, they ran 2 sets of books.
Well, 2 sets of contracts.
We talk about brown paper bags full of money and boats registered and bizarre things. Like, how much of that is true?
Well, there was definitely a boat involved.
Emerging from the darkest period of their short history, the ravaged Storm put on a united front.
We stand here today united. We are not going anywhere. We ain't going to surrender.
Still to this day, some players say that It was really unfair. I did nothing wrong. I shouldn't have been punished. I won those premierships fairly and squarely with my blood, sweat and tears.
Yeah, and that's hard to get your head around if you're a player. I accept that. You know, I think I said at the time, if you're asked to sign 2 contracts, your alarm bells, should be ringing. But I didn't hide your contract at the CEO's house.
You must have been the most hated man in Melbourne.
I regret that I didn't immediately go down there and see them. They asked me not to. They said I'd stay away, things are a bit raw.
David Gallop walked into the Storm for the first time since he threw the book at them last April. Though nearly 5 months have passed, emotions are still running high.
Do people still ask you about it?
It's a big moment in Australian sport, not just rugby league. But I'd like to think that strict enforcement of the cap and making sure that the competition stays even, I hope it's a focus now because it's I think it's really important for rugby league to be running an even competition.
The shock news of David Gallop's departure came through just before 2 p.m, and when he fronted the media, they wanted to know if he was pushed.
Mutual agreement, and the time to put that into effect now.
In 2012, your departure seemed like a sudden one. What had been going on?
We had a pretty small group of people that had an operating rhythm. We had a board that weren't interfering in the day-to-day running of the game, and the commission structure came in. Part of the deal was that people that were currently on the board had to jump off. What's the saying? There's only room in town for one sheriff, and that wasn't going to be me. So I think on my last day I said it's the greatest game of all, and I still believe that.
You changed the game so much. Do you feel like you left it in a far better place than you found it?
Yeah, I think, the game had been through an incredible upheaval before my time as the CEO, and once I left, we were back running a great competition that people loved, and the game today has got bigger and bigger off the back of those years, I think.
Would you have done anything differently when you look back at your time?
On the big things, I think in my time, I'd like to think we got most things right.
Well, thank you so much for your decades of service and devotion, and it's nice to know that you're still a fan of the game at the end of the day.
Thanks a lot, Vonnie.